So I'm getting a lot of emails the last couple of days with folks asking, Rabbi, what's going on in Israel? They don't understand. We don't understand. And maybe not everybody is even aware. So I wanted to share a little bit of a message about something that's happening that has never happened before in the state of Israel, which is new elections. Well, you might be saying to yourselves, didn't Israel just have elections? Well, yes, but it's a parliamentary democracy, and the rules are a little bit different than they are here. So here's the quick little, your civics lesson 101. Ready? Everybody listening? You're going to be tested. It's important, right? Take some notes. Don't take notes. It's Shabbos. So here's the story. There's elections every 4 years unless the Knesset, which is Israel's parliament, until it dissolves. Okay, that much we got. They had elections, but unlike the early years of the state, nobody has most of the votes. You need a majority. And if you don't have a majority, you have to start making deals and negotiating with other political parties because everybody votes for a party, not for a candidate. There's no districts like we have for the House of Representatives. You vote for a list. And if you have more votes for that list, they have more seats in the parliament, in the Knesset, in the governing body in the state of Israel. With me? Nobody's asleep yet. Good. Okay. Keep going. Hey. So if you need to negotiate and build a coalition, that means you're making deals with lots of other parties. Well, in the last number of decades, there are certain ultra-Orthodox political parties that are a strong minority in the state of Israel, but wield tremendous power because in order to govern, you need a coalition, which means you need at least 61 members of the Knesset in your coalition, so their votes are kind of crucial. Well, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, a lot of people will call him Bibi, but Netanyahu wanted to accommodate some of their demands. Well, there's one party that's mostly voting as a bloc from Russian immigrants, right? Russian immigrants leaving the Soviet Union. Some of us of a certain age might remember Soviet Jewry as an issue, and where we're going to Washington or making trips to Moscow and smuggling in Bibles and such. I was a little young to do that, but I made it to Washington. And the whole idea with Gorbachev and Glasnost and all of those things, finally there's a let my people go moment, and lots of Soviet Jews leave the Soviet Union, Russia, and they make their way, hundreds of thousands, all at once, into the state of Israel, which puts a lot of pressure on a small developing country. But that's what you do. You bring everybody in. So there's a block of voters in the state of Israel that votes mostly as Russian immigrants, and they're kind of right of center. But because they were in the Soviet Union, they didn't have the same kind of Jewish education as other folks. In fact, they weren't allowed to. If you were teaching Hebrew in the 70s or 80s, you could be put into prison or sent to one of these camps and work camps, a gulag. Younger folks don't necessarily know just how awful this situation was for Soviet Jews, but they became very assimilated. And there's also in Israel an Orthodox establishment that's part of a chief rabbi's office, right? There's chief rabbi of Israel, which we would imagine would be this great inspirational kind of leader. Well, in recent decades, it's become a strong political, powerful force that monitors people's Jewish behaviors or lack of Jewish behaviors. You think I'm tough. You have no idea. So this has come to a head in Israel right now. And here's the crux of the story. In Israel right now, that the political party that has all of these Russian immigrants voting, well, the head of it is a guy named Avigdor Lieberman. He doesn't want to negotiate. Because what the ultra-Orthodox political parties want, the Haredim want, is no draft. They haven't been drafted for all of these years, for decades, But there's a point where some of the Israeli population is saying, well, my kids are serving in the army. My kids are putting themselves at risk. My family is all at risk. Remember, men stay in the reserves until they're 40. Sons and fathers and sons and daughters are all still have mandatory service in the army. Women can continue in a career path, but their reserve duty isn't mandated by the state. You have a lot of resentment for people that are being perceived as not needing to serve in the same way, but the government supports them to study Torah. And part of the Torah that they're learning and orientation that they're learning is not necessarily so inclusive or welcoming or encouraging. It's very rigid in their own way. And this isn't about orthodoxy in general. This isn't slamming Orthodox Judaism. This isn't about Jewish tradition or Jewish law. There are some people who have really politicized their Jewish approach to life and has made things harder for others. Right? So for one quick example, if you're a Reform rabbi and you marry a couple, you officiate at a couple's wedding in Israel, it's not going to be recognized by the Israeli government. There are people who are doing it. Hundreds and hundreds are doing it more and more and more, being married by Reform and conservative rabbis, and then either they are choosing not to get it recognized by the state, they're only having a religious ceremony, not recognized by the state, or they go outside of the country for another kind of civil marriage. It's kind of heartbreaking if you think about it, that people who want to experience Judaism in a progressive kind of a way, whether it's Reform Judaism, conservative Judaism, any other Judaism that might not be a traditional Judaism, that the Israeli government of all places doesn't recognize those weddings. And it becomes much harder. It's not just about weddings. It's not just a feeling of being slighted. There's other things that are really difficult, especially when the rabbis are revoking, rescinding conversions of people from Orthodox rabbis from years and years ago. There's a lot of injustice that's going on. So back to the election, this guy, Avigdor Lieberman, leading this mostly Russian political party of Russian immigrants, says, we want the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox community within the state of Israel, like every other citizen, to serve in the army. Whether that's a good idea or not is a different conversation, but he sticks to his guns, and so there's no coalition. So there's new elections for the first time. There's elections, that was just 6 weeks ago, and now there's going to be elections again September 17th. It's a little crazy. So what is it that I want to tell you other than a history lesson or a politics class? In Israel's Declaration of Independence, which is a non-binding, it's not legal, but it is the spirit of why Israel was created, it says the state of Israel will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all of its inhabitants. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace, as envisioned by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all of its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions, and it will be faithful to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. 1948. What an amazing document. It's an incredible vision for a Jewish state, because a Jewish state shouldn't just be a majority of Jews. It is, but 20% of Israel's population are not Jews, and 20% of Israel's Jewish population is Orthodox, of one sort or another. So if the Jewish state is supposed to be a welcoming place for all Jews, why is it that the elections are going to happen again because there are some Jews in the Jewish state that feel like they're not counted enough? And so Avigdor Lieberman, somebody I disagree with on basically every single issue, has taken this really incredible, extraordinary stand, because this is the political coalition of his dreams, but he's watching out for his constituents in a certain way. And there's other people who are concerned about the Jewish character of the Jewish state. So here's the question. What makes a Jewish state Jewish? Is it just that it's a majority of Jews? Well, I'll tell you, for me, it has to be more. It has to be the principles that you heard in the Declaration of Independence for the State of Israel, but it also has from other texts. So whether it's Deuteronomy and talking about justice, justice you shall pursue, or from the prophet Isaiah that says, devote yourself to justice and aid the wronged, and even from the prophet Micah, a text that will be familiar to many of us, Adonai has told you what is good and what God requires of you. Only this, do justice, love goodness, and walk humbly with your God. Well, I think that there are some cousins in Israel that are not doing those things. They're really only looking for their own power. And it's time to respond to that. Now, some of you might say, Rabbi Green, I've kind of had enough. It's too difficult to love Israel, whether it's about peace issues or the idea that I could be Jewish anywhere in the world except in the state of Israel, my version of it. It's crazy. It doesn't work that way, and it doesn't feel good, so I'm out. Well, I don't want you to give up so quickly. I don't. Because Israel and America, for that matter, are far more bigger, greater, dynamic than any political administration and any political party. So I want to share with you one more text. Rabbi Heschel, Abraham Joshua Heschel has kind of formed my orientation of Zionism and how I feel about Israel and the Jewish state. And it's from him where I always repeatedly tell you that I believe the state of Israel and the land of Israel is the embodiment of hope. And if that is the case, that's going to impact how I live, the embodiment of hope. Heschel teaches Israel is a personal challenge, a personal religious issue. It is a call to every one of us as an individual, a call which one cannot answer vicariously. The ultimate meaning of the state of Israel must be seen in terms of the vision of the prophets, the redemption of all. The religious duty of the Jew is to participate in the process of continuous redemption, in seeing that justice prevails over power, that awareness of God penetrates human understanding. Israel, for me, is more than refuge, and it's more than this amorphous homeland. It is a place that embodies hope and redemption, the power of transformation. And there's injustices that are being committed even from other Jews, which means we show up, the same sermon I give with a different framework all around it, every single week we show up, we do our part, we continue to go, we continue to support. But if you want to focus your support, your giving in a certain way, think about those Reform and conservative synagogues. Think about how to support our efforts to build connections with other progressive Jews, Reform Jews in the Ramat HaNegev region. We're starting a book club via Zoom, video conferencing with their community, their new Reform Jewish community and ours. We are trying to build relationships. But yes, it also means about tzedakah and money, whether it's $10 or $100 or $1,000. How do we level the playing field with other Reformed Jewish communities in Israel? And we're going to be announcing formally in a very short moment another community-wide trip to Israel. The first time it's really community-wide. We went from the synagogue maybe a year and a half ago. A year from now, there's going to be a 2-track program, one for families and one for adults, going to Israel with Har Hashem, Bonei Shalom, and the JCC. All of the details are still being worked out, but we hope that you go. We hope that you see for yourself, especially if you haven't been yet. and to respond to that call, a call for being a part of redemption. And I think that's what this is all about. Let's move to conclude again.